buche everybody in Cyberland. It's your favorite Babalao. At least I hope so. Omodum, Odileke coming at you with another great video. Apologize, I've been a little absent lately, but you guys know, no matter what, the spiritual world complements the physical world, and my physical world has been very demanding lately. So I'm trying to mesh the two and balance it out, just like each and every one of us try to do every single day of our lives. Because, like many of us, right, we don't necessarily depend on this faith in order to generate funds, to do money. No, I have a full-time job. I got a profession, right? So with that said, I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. I wanted to kind of make sure that we understand what is it that it truly means to be part of this culture, to be part of this faith. Because this faith is beautiful, but I believe that there's a misconception on how we get through this faith. I believe that a lot of people see this faith as money makers and don't truly understand what this journey means. And if you don't understand this journey early and you dive right into the aspects of priest and priestesshood, you will find yourself in a big situation where you may not be able to get yourself out of. So with that said, let's get after it. Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche. Right. So with that said, like I like to tell every single person, one, thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing. Thank you for liking. If you haven't heard the podcast, that's a phenomenal podcast that I've been trying to run so I can talk to you guys in the clear, talk to you unfiltered, not necessarily educational, as I try to focus the YouTube on the education. So thank you for that. For those of you who have been participating in your favorite Bala Institute, we already completed one course. We're already on session 1 of course 2, and it is going great. It is going way better than I expected it to, and man, am I super excited for it. So let's talk about our faith. Let's talk about the Yoruba traditions. Let's talk about where do you go from here, right? And what is step 1? I'm constantly challenged with the same question over and over again. Where do I begin? This is what they did to me. And this is what they didn't do to me. And this is my questions. And you get a lot of followers, a lot of practitioners who are stuck in this rut, trying to understand where they're going. And some people, at a certain point, get so frustrated that they turn their backs on this faith. And it's not the faith's fault. It's the human's fault. The faith is beautiful. The faith is pure. It gives you the tranquility, the stability, in order for you to generate what you need for your spiritual alignment and growth. It's just the humans that don't communicate well in order for us to truly understand where we're going and how we're going to get there. Right? And that's what I want to communicate. First things first, when we talk about the aspects of the Yoruba faith, we understand that everyone has a path to follow. 1, there's no cookie cutter approach. That's 2. Why do I say that? Because if everyone has a path to follow and there's no cookie cutter approach in those 2 aspects that I'm explaining, then that means that no one can ever tell you, because of this, you have to do this. No. Just because your Odu and Ifa says this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do this. Okay? That's example number 1. Example number 2, because your guardian Orisha says this, you have to do this. No. Again, there's no cookie cutter. Now, when I combine an Odu and I combine a guardian Orisha, and I also look at the Ita, the prophecy, the witnesses, I'm able to come to a conclusion on what that person needs. So, first rule, no cookie cutter approaches. Don't let anyone drag you into a cookie cutter approach unless you truly understand the why behind it. That's number 1. Number 2, when we talk about the aspects of what should I receive first? What should I do? I enjoy the faith. I enjoy what the faith has to offer. I'm really liking where my spirituality is going. Well, it's simple. You receive your hand of Ifa, right? Your mano de Orunmila, or Awofakan, or Ikofafun. And those are 2 ceremonies that are going to highlight, based off of my examples, a toyale, a sign that your destiny, your Ori, is communicating to that Babalao who's pulling out that sign in order for you to understand how to navigate your life. That's your Toyale. In addition, that Toyale comes out with witnesses. You're going to get advice from Babalaos, and you're going to get a prophecy, and you're going to also understand who is your guardian Orisha. Who is your Orisha? Abatori. The Orisha that covers your Ori and serves as a mediator, that serves as your strongest warrior, right? Or your strongest Orisha that's going to guide you towards your destiny along with your Ori. So your guardian Orisha is very important to understand, right? So now that you receive your Mano de Orula, which is step number one. Number one that we talked about was no cookie cutter approaches. Number two, if you like this faith, then step number one is receiving your hand of Orunmila. All right? With that should come your warriors. I believe that everybody should receive their warriors and their hand of Orunmila. A lot of times they come together. Now, if you want to receive your warriors first and then you want to receive your hand of Orunmila, completely respectable. However, getting them all together helps you navigate some of the aspects and some of the things that you have to do with your warriors, which is why typically you want to receive them together. That's very important. When you receive your Mano de Orunmila, okay, or your hand of Orunmila, with that comes a lot of advice. There's a sit-down session in the 3-day ceremony because hand of Orunmila, Mano de Orunmila, Awofa, Kaikofa, okay, that is a 3-day ceremony. Sometimes it's shortened into 2 for whatever reason. It's respectable nonetheless. But on that last day, when they are sitting on that estera, on that straw mat, and the Babalao is pulling and marking, okay? That is the day of Ita. You're going to get a lot of advice that your godparents should be transcribing, your godparents should be giving it to you later, your godparents should be consolidating everything so that you have it and you understand where you're going and how you're going to get there. The Babalaos, for the most part, understand Toyale, understand the witnesses, because 3 signs come out, your prophecy comes out, and they're able to consolidate that information along with your guardian Orisha to give you a product that's individualized just for you. That's your hand of Ifa. Your hand of Orunmila, better yet, easier to say. So, once you have that, once you dissected it, once you begin to try your best to master your Ita, that is when it's time to start to get to the next step. In my humble opinion, and I'm not speaking for any other houses, it takes you a full year before you're able to truly understand your Ita, understand your walk, understand how you need to best maneuver this world. Number 2, right after you understand your Ita, right after you've had a year to kind of learn the ins and outs of what it is to receive and be initiated into this faith, then we also have an aspect that's called your Eguns. In your 3-day ceremony, or your 2-day, depending on how it plays itself out, that first day is dedicated to honoring the Eguns. All right, that's when we open up, because we always have to honor the Eguns first. Eguns talks about your ancestral spirits. Talks a lot about spirits that can be from your bloodline, that can be your spirit guide, that can be multiple different things. And that's very important to understand. When we talk about spiritual masses, all right, that is something that should come immediately after you receive your, you've had a year of your hand of Orunmila, your warriors, etc. That's something that is going to be able to begin to outline your spiritual framework. Because if you go in order, receive your warriors with your hand of Orunmila, you have it for a year, you begin to master it for a year. Your next step is, let me see who walks with me in the spiritual world. Who am I giving thanks to from the ancestral world? Because your Eguns and your ancestral spirits are going to walk with you hand in hand through your destiny, which was communicated with you during your Ita. It all goes together hand in hand. In addition, at your 1 year mark, it's very important that you receive your teja de Egun, a clay tile of Egun, in order for you to begin to invoke the energy of Ifa, because now you have received your hand of Orunmila a year ago. You have begun to master your Ita, and now it's time to solidify that energy and start talking to your Eguns, to the teja de Egun. The spiritual misa that I'm talking about after that first year as well is an understanding of your spiritual, what we call cuadro, your framework. And that's what begins to manipulate an understanding and how to set up what's called a bóveda. And that's something that's very important to understand. All these things start to go in order. And then when you start to look at that aspect on what does that 1 year look like, what does the Eguns look like, and we continue to see how your growth is going and how things begin to flow, it's also very important to understand that nonetheless, many of you will have paths to priest and priestesshoods. Many of you are going to want to join those ranks. Many of you will have to join those ranks based on the Odu that is marked for you in your Toyale, in your hand of Orunmila. And many times, even when you do your spiritual misas and you understand your spiritual framework, they will also give you roads and paths to walk through in order for you to truly understand where you need to go into that land when it comes to the Eguns. That's why you hear concepts such as scratching, or you hear about Palo Moyumba, or you hear about a lot of those different Egun type societies within our culture that is necessary in order to provide you, again, with the clear path of destiny which you received during your Ita. All these things begin to complement that. And if you have a path to a priest and priestesshood, then you have done it right? And you would have waited a year, received your teja, done your spiritual misas, understood your journey where you're walking through, understood your itas broken down by your godfather, and then you will begin to mature within the spiritual world. And at that very moment, you begin to find out that you are either capable or not capable, right, of taking that next step to a priest or a priestess status. And that's why it's very important for you to understand that. It's very important that we never rush anything. You'll hear me say this 100 times. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. I promise you that. If you sprint, you may find yourself in dilemmas. With that said, spiritual leadership is important. Understanding the growth and the service to the community is going to be vital for you to be successful if you decide to go into the priest and priestesshood. Understanding that Ifa, or if you decide to go and you become a priest or a priestess in the ranks of Ocha, right? Everything lives within the umbrella of Ifa. So when you start to talk about the Orishas and you talk about crowning ceremonies and you talk about going through those steps, you are still a servant to the community. Babalaos, priests and priestesses, are servants to communities, right? And that's why servant leadership is important. Understanding how to be a follower is important early on so that you don't find yourself in the predicament of unable to either adapt, lead, or better, take people into the journey that they need to go through. This is not something you learn overnight. This is not something that you automatically get crowned one day, or you become a babalao one day, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're empowered and you're ready to run the community. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot of sacrifice, it takes learning, it takes years to begin to truly understand philosophy, truly understand technique, and truly understand how to perform the ceremonies necessary to save people's lives and guide them where they need to go. And it's very important for us to understand how that process plays out. It's very important for us to understand and never allow ourselves to fall victim to someone who wants to sprint instead of doing the marathon. The marathon will give you more insight. It would empower you more, and it will allow you to be a better priest and priestess later on. Again, I am not trying to speak for any other spiritual houses, nor do I want to. But this is just some perspective that I am giving based on the amount of questions that I get about where do I go now. And that is something that we all need to understand. That is something that we, as spiritual people, need to understand, that we are the advocates of this faith. If we begin to look at this faith as anything more than ethics, morals, leadership, followership, and how do we best allow people to follow their destiny, we are going to fall victim to the misdeeds of others. Meaning, don't allow greed. This faith is not about money. It's not. This faith is not about power. It's not. This faith is very pure, and it allows us to follow the concepts of what we call iwapale and the good character. So hopefully we can all kind of come to an agreement, understand how do we generate the momentum in this faith in order to be successful. And hopefully with this video, you guys have just that much more information in your tool belt in order for you to press forward. And again, if you guys have any questions, shoot me an email. Don't forget to give me the like, give me the subscribe, and iburu, iboya, ibucheche.